way, this is just over in the, show you what the open space committee.
Some kindness to some
I'm sure how well you can get rid of it.
Yes, we
Isn't that the Rocky one?
That's a rocking chair.
You want this one?
Can I keep this?
Yeah, you can, sure. We're gonna start putting it on the website and
Oh, okay.
put it in like the library and.
Schedule events, although you already know that. Somebody new. Hey, Tom, put one. I'm gonna put one over here for some of the peanut gallery. There, please. Drama doesn't exceed their tolerances.
You only get one set of minutes?
That is correct, only one set of minutes.
That's
I was ill, Debbie's on vacation today, so we've just been slacking off like crazy.
The break in Essex, is that gonna affect her? Sewer line break?
I don't know, did it kibosh town hall?
Kibosh all the shellfish and everything else down there.
Oh.
Pretty big, I guess.
Oh my goodness, no, that's never a good thing, is it?
That's a new line.
That is never a good thing.
Enforcement or something, or?
It must be the main line right there on 133, right near the water.
Yeah,
And,
the collection.
I hope they won't working on something like that brewery.
I don't think it was a result of work,
Let's
actually.
not work.
Well, that's good.
When did it happen?
2 days ago. They didn't know the extent of it till.
Okay, sorry for the delay, here's tonight's meeting material. Here's Judy's packet if she shows up. Not that it's any different from either of yours, but. Also. Okay.
You got my-
tells me life is good, otherwise I wouldn't know that. Oh, sorry, we're a little delayed. Are you all ready,
No problem.
audio visual?
All set, let me know.
Okay,
You all set?
go right ahead.
This is the May 29th, 2018 meeting of the Raleigh Conservation Commission. The commission will hereby be called to order under the authority of the Mass General Law 131, Section 40, the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw, and Stormwater Management and Erosion Control Bylaw. Notice is given that both a video and audio recording will be made of this meeting. The agent will now call the roll for attendance.
Arthur Page.
Here.
Kurt Turner. Bob Garner.
Here.
Judy Keys. Dan Shinnick.
Here.
Sam Strife.
Here.
Howard Vogel.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum present.
All right, that'll bring us to our first item, which is payroll and or vendor bills.
If I may request reimbursement for some office supplies, some paper, storage box for our closed stormwater permits. And let's see, what else? And some ink cartridges, because I was able to get a cumulative $50 off by breaking the purchases, as well as getting a case for the new iPad that the stormwater fund is paying for.
Very good.
I try. Any expense money not spent is expense money we can use for something else.
I'm pretty fortunate that way. Getting it right down close.
I forgot my glasses. These are the two backup invoices for those two line items. That is it for payroll bills type, that category.
All right, the next item is the minutes, there's 3 separate meetings, I know there's some questions. I saw,
We only have
In the
one
email.
set of minutes ready, Mr. Chairman.
okay,
Review, and that is the
May 9th.
the May 9th.
Yep.
So we'll go right to the May 9th, 2018, and Kurt, you had a
Spelling
item on there
question.
which they changed.
Yes,
Yeah, we had, due to the audio and Debbie's unfamiliarity with,
Did everybody have a chance to look at the electronic version of that and the changes made after Kurt had noted that? Do I hear a motion to accept as presented?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
How far back do our non-written minutes go?
I'm sorry, would not be able to just spit that out without,
Yeah,
we,
you see, we're apparently into 2012.
yes,
We're caught up since
Yeah, we're making headway.
2012 on.
yeah. We're moving backwards.
I mean, let's-
Yeah.
We must be getting
There's
closer.
things that were,
Yeah.
well, there's, I mean,
Do we go to BC or
there was.
Before,
before
Howard.
conservation?
Before Howard. All right, well, that would bring us now to our next item, which is conservation restriction at Mahaffey Farm.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to do two
Okay.
things here.
I will be-
Could I ask for who made the motion?
did.
Dan? Okay. You have a second?
I second.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to manage the screen.
conservation restriction at Mahaffey Farm, 179 Newbury Road, parcel lot 35, Essex County Greenbelt. You have the floor.
Thank you. Well, we have arrived finally at the final piece of this wonderful project. So this is the day that if you choose, you can sign the conservation restriction, acknowledging your acceptance of the conservation restriction. There are 3 documents to sign. The first is the conservation restriction from the Tenney family, which now owns the parcel. Immediately once we have all the signed documents, as a reminder, what will happen is that parcel will immediately transfer to William Mahaffey. And then William Mahaffey will then sign the second document for you to sign tonight, which is the amendment to the conservation restriction, which brings in the remainder of the acreage into the conservation restriction to make it the full 28.8 acres. And then the third document for you to sign will not be recorded. That is a memorandum of agreement between the town of Rowley and Essex County Greenbelt regarding the stewardship of the property, basically designating us as the ones who are going to be on the ground annually monitoring the property, and also reaffirms that we will be the ones who will develop the parking area and establish the trail and put in all the signage and all of that. So I have those 3 documents for you to sign tonight, if you are so willing.
Quick question, so when are you guys planning to do that work? The parking lot and the
The
trail?
parking lot, I mean, hopefully, we have a little bit of a backlog right
Yeah,
now
no, I'm just
at
saying, like,
Greenbelt,
kinda,
but
how out would it be, like in the fall or something like that?
it might end up being next spring.
Next spring? Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think,
just
yeah,
wondering.
yeah.
I believe it was specified to occur within a year, wasn't it?
I think we have until the end of 2019, according to the document, the MOA, but we
Yeah,
would aim to get it
Somewhere,
done much
yeah.
sooner than that, yeah.
anyway, in regards to, first off, I would recommend consideration of a motion, and I would like to report for the commission's edification that town council and your office staff have fully reviewed and offer a recommendation to sign
If
all 3 documents.
If I might add to that, what I typically recommend as well is that the Conservation Commission also recommend that the select board sign their approval as well.
I think we already did, but it'll be fine to do it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
The amount was, that the town is contributing to the cost of this was approved at the town meeting in,
Yes,
was it May or April? Early May.
May.
Do I hear such a motion?
So what do we need for a motion right now? Motion to,
Motion to sign and forward the
addition
recommendation
to the
for
selectmen.
signature by the selectmen.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Brent, did you say you are a notary? I'm a notary as well, but if you wanna notarize these, that would be great. I'm happy to have you do that. So, this is the first document, the conservation restriction from the Tennys. There are 2 places for you to sign. The first is the signature page of acceptance for the conservation restriction. The second is the memorandum of stewardship agreement. That's just clipped to the back of that. A copy of that will be recorded with the CR, but the originals will reside with us.
You need to sign
You
it.
go
Is there
first.
certain-
Yeah, Chairman.
Yeah.
Usually a place.
We have a signed signing.
And then the second document I'll pass around is the amended conservation restriction. should I pick up the certified copy from you tonight, or do you want me to do that tomorrow morning on my way in? Certified copy of the town meeting vote. Oh, thank you. One step ahead of me as always.
What's your next project?
The Dodge Reservation.
Yes, and Rowley, yes, that's right,
Working on
the
that
Dodge
one.
Reservation, yep,
Oh, you, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're working on that,
Yeah,
that CRs.
We're not too far off on that one either. That one's a little more straightforward.
While we're getting that signed, did you wanna announce on TV anything in regards to the open space?
Well, we got a minute here?
We have a minute here, well, the notaries, go ahead, notary.
Showed this to everybody early while we're waiting. This is some work that was done by the Open Space Committee. It's a brochure on the Raleigh trails. So we have a new person that's on our committee that's very clever with handling this kind of stuff. So basically, this is a document that can be put at the library, like the new spa that's opening up eventually. Sam,
That's the only spot there. That doesn't
Who's the
have to
person
be there.
behind it?
This one doesn't? Oh, okay.
it's the new person.
Just
So
record
we
a
met
copy
her.
of it.
We met her, she
Yeah.
was here. at our meeting.
Please send
She
me
does this type of
PDF
stuff for
of it.
Yeah.
mapping for
Yeah,
the
she's
state,
done some
yeah.
Now I
work
know
before,
this is an
so-
intermediate step.
Happy to, yeah.
That's right, I said, I was
Oh,
actually
where's the
interested
top
in
one?
it, I'm happy
I'm
because
just gonna look.
that'll be something that will then
Yeah.
Right, right.
add as another
State,
trail
state.
once that's completed. Oh, yeah. You snuck in on me.
Thank you, Steve.
While Brent is finishing up, I just want to say thank you so much for your help, your support, your participation. It's been a pleasure working with you on this project, and I hope you're all as happy as I am that we're near the finish line. It's a really wonderful project.
Thank
So-
you for all your hard work and how many times have you been before other boards on this? A lot.
It's a pleasure. It really is. It's a team effort. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Alright. Our next item would be the conservation restriction on 42 Doobie Road, map 5, parcel lot 40, John Sullivan.
So my personal knowledge here, we just put the
Oh,
board of the conservation commissioners
oh,
of the town of Rowley.
shoot.
Okay, you can just cross and initial it. I think it'll be fine.
So just check off my personal knowledge.
This is from to Newbury Road, 15
And
Road.
what I would do
right next to each
is
other. Literally.
Cross off and initial that, and then fill in, Conservation Commission. That's fine. I'm just missing that.
Okay, next agenda item. Do you need anything for 42 Newbury Road?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got a request for a continuance because we're still,
Okay, what I have in front of me here is from John Sullivan. I'll just read the top one, 'cause
yeah, oh
we
yes,
only read
please,
one
just
one.
read the top one.
From early emails, my counsel and I have agreed we should ask for a continuance to a later date as well, so we can also go through the current responses. Thank you, John Sullivan. So what we have is, he's applying for a motion to continue, which I believe, according to this, would be our June 19th meeting.
Yeah.
Do I hear such a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Just a quick question. The reason we needed to do a motion on that, even though it wasn't official, it was in administrative versus being on, was there,
Well, the idea in conducting business at a public meeting is so that anyone in attendance will know the status of something. So
Okay.
when you move and continue something, you let folks know if they're interested in that particular item, that it's going to be brought forward,
Okay.
if at all possible, at the next meeting. It wasn't brought forward tonight because there's still
I know, I saw those.
there's still back and forth of rather critical details, and everyone was distributed the CR to start off with because there's a requirement in the order of conditions for his project to get started on the CR, and that had not occurred. So now that we've started on the CR, we're doing some of the same kind of stuff, except most of it is between council and the office at this point in time, not wanting to take up the commission's time on items that are fairly straightforward and need to be appropriately dealt with
Okay. I'm
before,
just trying to understand.
before brought to the commission. You know, they did wish to appear, but in our discussions and back and forth today, because of the holiday weekend and stuff and the items that town council had identified, it was thought better to
Okay.
address those items and then bring forward a revised document that was closer to fruition than the current one is at this point in time. But also them being in attendance, it would make better use of everyone's time
Right.
discussing things at that point.
The next item on the agenda would be commissioner reappointments.
Yes, so. We received notification from the selectman's office that Commissioner Turner, Vice Chair Turner, and Commissioner Garner are up for appointment. And through email, whatever, both those gentlemen, I'm glad to report, would like to stay and serve on the commission and serve the town of Raleigh. And so they have sent in requests to the selectman's office for reappointment. I would like direction, if I may ask for direction from the chair, to author and communicate our support for their reappointment to the Board of Selectmen on behalf of the commission.
Yes, I
As
think
long
that
as-
would be excellent. I think they're both a very good part of our team. Yeah, we seem to be doing quite well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Kurt makes up for my lack of spelling.
Very good. Okay.
This is a legal notice of the Raleigh Conservation Commission. In accordance with the Wetland Protection Act, Mass General Law 131, Section 40, as amended by the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw, a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 29th, 2018, at 7:45 at Room 5 of the Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street, to consider a request for the determination of applicability for the application filed by Jean and Edward Belson for proposed soil evaluation, subsurface sewage disposal system and installation possibly within a 100-foot buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland, 10 Brook Street, map 11, parcel lot 29 in Raleigh, Mass. If you would introduce yourself, you have the floor.
Tom Mineta from Thomas Mineta Incorporated, representing the Belsons tonight at 10 Brook Street. We're here for soil testing within the 100-foot buffer zone, and potentially that the future design to be within that. This area is shown in yellow on the plan, so that we would not have to come back if it actually fits in that spot. So we're here for the soil testing as well as the design, future design.
Is this a failed system or an upgrade?
It is, it's a
Failed.
failed system, yep. The existing systems here is here in orange, and this yellow is where we're proposing to do the soil testing. This green, you know, is the wetlands, and this darker orange, brighter orange is the 100-foot buffer zone.
Anybody have any questions on this?
What's that diagonal line that goes up?
This,
Yes,
that's a town line,
okay.
the Georgetown.
Georgetown, Raleigh boundary. So just as we saw at, I believe it was 226 Haverhill Street, where we have a very constrained lot, a lot of wetland resource areas in the back. And the applicant's engineer is making every attempt to situate a new subsurface sewage disposal system as far away from the resource areas as possible. And since the lot is highly constrained, it's very unlikely that once they do the soil evaluations in that location, that they will also be doing the installation of the replacement septic system. So since erosion control is the main item of concern when you're in a previously maintained lawn area for where the system is going to go, and we also don't have any real slope issues, really, that's, you know, except for the landscape trees that are
Right,
potentially
exactly.
in the
Yep.
way. It's more of a concern, trying to save their nice little birch
Birch
clump
trees, right.
that's in the front. But anyway, so the house and the driveway pretty much cut off any area where sedimentation could be flowing and head towards the resource area, as well as the distance away is fairly substantial. So I did provide a memo to the commission, and the memo's been reworked from our standard soil evaluation criteria to also include that the submittal of the health department approved system plans to the RCC staff for review and approval prior to installation of the subsurface sewage system. That's item number 6. 7, redeployment of erosion controls if needed and reinspection by the RCC/staff, number 7. And then number 8, disturbed areas to be stabilized, because that is the end result you want to have occur in either soil evaluations or in putting in a subsurface system. With then number 9, stipulation of erosion control properly maintained until final stabilization of disturbed areas. And number 10, inspection of site surface conditions by the RCC/staff to verify stabilization of work site upon completion of all activities. So there's there's review and re-inspection as well as submittal of approved plans so that we'll know what the proposed grading and construction activities are. So if the commission feels that that is properly monitoring and reviewing this work activity in the 100-foot buffer zone, I hope you consider the possibility of voting to issue a negative determination, option number 3, incorporating the special conditions.
I don't think it's kind of a no-brainer, that's about the only place you can put that. This
That's
looks
fine.
level, it might be a better yard for them anyways.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't seem to be really vegetated right there. So I hear such a motion for negative approval. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Request signatures. Mr. Chairman, before the opening, reading of this agenda item, there is a bylaw fee waiver request.
Yes.
That's been distributed
Yep.
to all the commissioners here. We can possibly take up that item.
All right, you people have the commission have this? I have been formally asked as chairman of the Conservation Commission to request a waiver for portion of a local bylaw application fee for land disturbance within a resource area defined by Raleigh Local Wetlands Bylaw. Enclosed is a letter with the worksheet. Bylaw fee worksheet is correct information, the explanation of the fee paid, the DEP fee worksheet based on local bylaw resource areas and DEP Wetland Protection Act fees. On behalf of the applicant, ONG Development and Design LLC, we are requesting that the commission waive the fee for disturbance within the endangered species habitat as mapped by Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program and the area within Zone 2 Wellhead Protection Area as mapped by the DEP. Waiver request is for the land disturbance in the resource area as outlined in item B of the wetland bylaw fee worksheet, which amounts to $60,144. The fee amount proposed, which is $8,344, is equal to the fee calculated based on the state wetland protection law. We feel this request is justified based on the fact that the developer plans to deed 10 acres of undisturbed woodland at the east end of the project to the Conservation Commission. The developer also plans upon creating 2 parking spaces and a walking trail for public access to the land. This land is adjacent to the open space, land currently owned by the town of Raleigh, to provide additional access to this land. Upside down, we look forward to discussing the waiver request for the commission at a public hearing meeting on May 29th. Benjamin C. Osgood. Okay, and it closes the fees, so. Does anybody have any comments or questions in regards to this? We're not unfamiliar with it.
I guess I'm curious as to whether it really is the east end or the west end.
It's the east. It's
It would be
east
the
end.
east, yeah.
So the east is to the left on that map? Oh,
No,
Right.
it would be, it's backwards. Mirror image, I guess you'd say.
Let's see.
It's see, there's your road.
It's going into Hunsley Hills? What's that backing into, the land the town previously owns?
This
In that
is
particular area, it's down closer to the Forest Ridge
Ice Pond.
project, but you have to go, there's backland there that's already owned by the town and under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission.
Which up until the Sullivan project, which is next door, we were landlocked.
Yeah.
So now this is more access to this.
Yeah, besides the Sullivan project, this is the second project, whereas before, we never
Oh,
had
gotcha.
any type of public access to get. In other words, my walking with Mr. Good, Mr. Boulay and Tremblay the other day was the first time I ever set foot
Yeah,
on our conservation land back there.
yeah.
Because you can't get there from here.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions or feelings in regards to this, or here for this?
So,
I'm Ben Osgood Jr., I'm here
Yes.
for this.
Okay, I get it. All right,
so I'll admit that I offered a recommendation to the applicant when discussing this, to do due consideration. And in another particular instance, we specifically looked to what the proposed WPA state NOI fee would have been. And that's why you have been presented a calculation sheet, which is for the total, both the town and the state portion of the fee, because any review of a project still takes staff administrative time, as well as your time to handle. So my advice to the applicant in this instance was to use a surrogate of the notice of intent possible fees as a way of coming up with some appropriate fee for this size project and the review that it has to go through, while at the same time acknowledging the fact that the total $68,000 bylaw fee, certainly the deeding of 10 acres of undisturbed, undeveloped open space has value, and that the commission would possibly consider that as a fair surrogate for, instead of tendering that amount of money, that the ownership of the land. There are other methodologies they could have adopted to protect those acres. They could have moved to either donate it to a land conservation organization, or they also could have kept ownership and looked to put in place a conservation restriction as we're doing. This is a different vehicle for protecting the land. The land will still be permanently protected if the town votes to accept this, and if the commission seeks the Board of Selectmen's authorization for accepting of this.
Kurt, do you have a?
I guess my question is, why wouldn't it be appropriate to have a conservation restriction on this in this similar manner to?
Because if it's deeded and provided to the commission with the advice in crafting the deed from town council, when it's entrusted to the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, it is by statute then protected for its natural resources. And then we also add the fact that it would be covered under Article 97 of Constitution of the Commonwealth, which further protects it and prevents it from any type of conversion to any other municipal use without an act of the legislature, as well as also replacement by an appropriate acreage of other conservation land to take its place, i.e. a no net loss.
So approximately, where's that 10 acres on this map? If you were to look at it? I mean, just quickly, I mean, is it
No,
right?
we're not gonna do it quickly, we're going to do it accurately. And I just need to get to the right sheet. Which sheet is that,
So-
Ben?
You know what, I brought
No, just give me the sheet number, please.
6 and 7. 7 shows most of this.
7 shows us, thank you. Okay.
See, it's on 2 different sheets.
So here it is. Now this also contains, even though the BVW delineation is over here, and within the BVW area is a vernal pool, which is also extremely sensitive and a resource area deserving of protection. So that would be within that area at all, as well as you can also see the Woods Road that's gonna provide the trail and the access that goes to the town conservation land that's already under the care and custody of the commission, but we haven't been able to get to it before.
Anybody would like to say anything?
I don't see any problem with waiving the fee under these conditions, honestly. Will any, it's not germane to the discussion about waiving the fee, but is there any other part of the property that will contain a conservation restriction? Or?
It'll access through there.
No, but in my memo, we're gonna have a discussion about the other open space parcels they have incorporated in their project about some kind of restriction on any conversion of the vegetative cover, except for where they're putting the stormwater basin and other stuff, but that can be covered by, again, our issuance of an order under the bylaw, which then has ongoing conditions, which would be enforceable.
Do you have anything to?
Where would the 2 parking spaces, where are they contemplated going?
Okay, hold on. So that means I gotta go to sheet 6, right? Actually, I don't see the parking space.
Right in the
Oh, wait,
cul-de-sac.
hold it, there they are, yeah, there's a whole bunch of intersecting lines on them, okay, I got it. They are kinda hard to see, but there's a little, like 2 little rectangles right there, and there's gonna be a path that goes along behind the residence and goes down, so as not to interfere with that common driveway, front yard area, private residences.
You gone before the planning board on this yet?
That's actually where some of this has already coalesced in our commentary as well as interactions with the planning board and their consultant, H.L. Brand.
On this sheet, is there any portion that is going to be part of this 10 acres?
This part right here, correct?
Correct.
Up there.
Goes all the way actually over to the other side of the 2 spaces. The 2 spaces would actually be on the conservation
It would-
parcel.
Okay.
Was there a structure on the other map?
I'm sorry?
There's an existing house.
And
there.
There's an existing house there,
And that will
yes.
continue to be,
Number 9,
that's number 9.
number 9, that's there.
So there must be a roadway.
Which kinda has the turnaround right in front of it, it's gravel, that's pre-existing.
Okay.
In my, if you hadn't had a chance to look at my memo, which you may not, cause I did it today, cause it was rather a lot of details. Mr. Hart, who is the owner of the property, who they have under an agreement with, he heats by firewood, and he has been managing his woodlot and done some very selective cutting. It's almost, the only way you can tell is you have to hunt for the stumps. The woods is in very good condition. There's very good diversity of species. It's not like he's just gone to one area. He's distributed uniformly his selective harvesting on it, so it's really pretty. Very pretty woods.
Oh, nice.
Is he
Very
going
good
to
condition.
continue to live there?
Yes.
Is he gonna continue to harvest trees once the land is donated to the Conservation Commission?
Oh, until he gets caught, right?
Sam, any further questions? Do I hear a motion to, based on the restrictions that Kurt is going to, Brent is going to,
Well, to grant their
Grant
request for a waiver with the contingency of the deeding of the 10 acres of open space to the care and custody of the commission.
do I hear a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I think that'd be good. Otherwise, I can't see us getting to that unavailable lot. We can walk through Mr. Sullivan's, but he's gonna be retaining ownership, I believe. Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan is maintaining ownership, yes, which is why we're working on the CR.
Right, I
Yeah.
do realize that.
And I'm sorry, who moved that?
I did.
Dan, who seconded?
I second.
Therefore, proceed
Now we can
opening
start
the
with
hearing.
the hearing. This is a legal notice for the Raleigh Conservation Commission in accordance with the Town of Raleigh Wetlands Protection Bylaw. Public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 29th at 8 p.m., Room 5, Town Hall Annex at 39 Central Street, to consider a notice of intent for the application filed by Robert Boulay, ONG Design and Development LLC, for the proposed construction of a roadway, 9 single-family residences, driveways, stormwater facilities, utilities associated with grading, possibly within DEP approved groundwater protection area Zone 2, priority habitat for endangered species, bordering vegetated wetlands, 100-foot buffer zone of BVW, vernal pool, and 100-foot vernal pool habitat at 50 Newbury Road, map 5, parcel 41 in Raleigh. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, my name's Ben Osgood, engineer for the project here, representing ONG Development. We have one of the owners here, Tom, and I think Rob was also at the site walk with Brent and I. So I just wanted, this is the existing conditions plan, and just to show you the different resource areas. There are state listed resource areas, BVW, which we have depicted by flags, and they were flagged by Mary Rimmer, Rimmer Environmental. Within that wetland area, there is a small vernal pool that Mary identified. The day she was there, it was a lot higher than when we were there last week, and so there was a lot of fringe habitat, and she agrees that, the vernal pool habitat actually goes out to the edge of the wetlands. There's places that were ponded that had since dried up, but they are vernal pool habitat. But maybe I'll just back up a little bit and just say, this is a 17-acre parcel piece of land. It's at 50 Newbury Road. There's an existing driveway that comes in, the existing house we spoke about. It's owned by Mr. Hart. As Brent said, he's been using this property for quite some time, probably 1976, I think, is when he purchased the property. It is undeveloped. There's some clearing here, that he has for his home, but for the most part, it's wooded. It's oaks, pines, maples, varied hemlocks, a varied cover. The topography is rolling. Some places it's very steep, others it's flat. And it actually runs, I think, over 1,000 feet back to the end of the property. It's a long and narrow, 700 feet wide back in here. So, in addition to those wetland resource areas, which are right about in the middle of the property, there is the Zone 2 wellhead protection zone that's mapped by DEP. So that is a local bylaw resource area. One reason we filed just a local bylaw notice of intent. This is not under the state bylaw. And then this entire property is mapped habitat, blandings, and spotted turtles. We have submitted our plans to Natural Heritage. We did actually receive an approval letter, a no-take letter, and that, I think you copied on that last week, so we've gone through that process. We have been to the planning board. They have approved our preliminary layout, our yield plan, the number of lots, and this is a cluster development. So we did have a yield plan that showed how we could develop the whole property in compliance with their regulations, but we're gonna back off and just develop a portion. So, so moving on to, there are quite a few sheets. I'm just gonna stick to some of the highlight sheets that have the grading and drainage so we can explain what we're doing. I do have the other sheets here, I know Brent has them. If there are other details you wanna look at on the other sheets, be happy to talk about those too. So what we're proposing is a 24-foot wide roadway. It comes in from Newbury. It just kind of follows the existing driveway that's there and ends with a cul-de-sac. It's 950 feet to the end of the roadway. We have a total of 10 units. They're all gonna be single-family units, 3 bedrooms, kind of craftsman-style homes. The existing house counts as one of our 10 units, so we're actually gonna have 9 new units, and that house will be incorporated into the condominium association, and will be subject to all the same rules and regulations as the new units are.
That's a private road then?
It will be a private road, maintained by the condominium association, that's correct. So, it's 24 feet wide, a little narrower than the planning board requirement of 26, just trying to be a little sensitive to impervious area and so on. The road actually comes in, it dips down, there's drainage in this location, there's a high point here. So this area of the roadway drains into a detention pond. Essentially, our drainage ponds are infiltration ponds, and they do not have any outflow during any storm. So all the water captured in a couple of ponds here, it all gets infiltrated into the ground. With the exception, we have a small pond here and a pond at the end. This pond will overtop in a 100-year storm event, but anything less, it will infiltrate all the water into the ground. So we are here obviously for the groundwater protection district. This is also the local groundwater overlay district. We're gonna go to the zoning board for that. So we have tried to develop this project to be sensitive to that, infiltrate as much as possible. So again, we have the drainage I spoke about here. There's a couple catch basins here. Most of this part of the roadway comes down into this larger pond here. This little depression is only there to capture the backyards here. This, you know, some flow does, in a 100-year storm, will flow off the property in that location. We infiltrate all of it in that little pond, but if we didn't do that, we would have had a little increase in that location. Because the ponds are infiltration ponds, we have a 85% treatment of stormwater. So we have deep sump catch basins, sediment forebays, what they call dry infiltration basins. So the deep sump catch basins get 25% credit, and then the dry infiltration basins get an 80% credit. So the combination gets you about 85%. 100% of our paved areas goes into these 2 ponds, so 100% of the paved area receives treatment. We do not have roof drains on the homes because we are able to bring all the water into the infiltration basins and infiltrate it there. The roof drains, I think it's better to have it go into the detention ponds, and I actually, whenever I do a design, I do not, if we show roof drains, we do not incorporate them into control of runoff. They're there because they're, in my view, they can be unreliable. They depend on a gutter system. The gutter system can be clogged, especially in a wooded area like this. They're subject to a homeowner just going out there and doing something to them, filling them in, making them not work, playing with the pipe system. So there's a little lack of control there. So I always design it so that the infiltration ponds take care of all the infiltration, and this would just be a bonus. The developer would like to not have the infiltration ponds, just so the individual roof infiltrators, just as it's a maintenance problem and something that another thing that the homeowners association doesn't have to deal with. So sewage disposal each of these homes serviced by sewer service. There's a pipe running down the road to a septic tank system right in here. So there's about a 7,000 gallon septic tank, a 4,500 gallon secondary septic tank, and then a 5,000 gallon pump chamber. So we take care of the pre-treatment here. We pump through a force main to a septic system that's located on its own parcel in this area here. I don't have the particular details, but it's a leach trench system with just pipe and stone trenches, fed by gravity through the pump. So we just pump along to a force main to the leach field here. We do have a little access road, and all of our construction stays outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the wetland and the vernal pool. So no disturbance within that buffer zone. And so I believe I did see, Brent, I saw your memo. I had a chance to scroll through it on my phone. I didn't see anything that was insurmountable. I mean, we can certainly, I think, comply with all those conditions. We're presently, like I said, at the planning board. We don't have our review of the drainage done yet. We've asked that Larry Granville out here. These plans were submitted to the planning board around the beginning of the month, probably the 5th or 6th, some of May. And we had a meeting on the 16th, and they hadn't had a chance to review them yet. And as of today, I don't think he's had a chance to review them. So some of those technical details are going to have to wait until the drainage review is in. I did. Maybe you could just show Brent to talk about the open space. I think it's sheets 3 and 4, possibly. I don't have them on board.
Oh, not the same ones I just looked at that had the open space?
I wanted to show the different, there's one that shows all the survey information. I think it's sheets 3 and 4.
Okay.
Right, so
That's sheet 3.
this is sheet 3. So this shows the different open space parcels. So open space parcel A is down at the beginning of the subdivision, which is in this area here. It's behind these homes. That will remain with the condominium association. It will have restrictions in that people will not be able to cut on it. It's not necessarily a conservation restriction, but it is an area that's owned by the homeowners association, restricted from further development. So, open space parcel B is up here and encompasses the detention pond that's on the left-hand side. That obviously will have the detention pond, so it will have development, it'll have a lawn area, there'll be maintenance required, and so on. It does wrap around, kind of follows this little strip here, comes around this pond. And so that, again, would be owned by the homeowners association. Open space parcel D. So this is open space parcel D, which is the main portion that the Conservation Commission would own. This parcel here is where the septic is. We call it proposed open space C, so it goes around the septic system. It's kind of delineated here. Goes around the septic system and actually has the roadway access. So that parcel comes back here, encompasses this pond, and then actually encompasses this open area in front of these units here. These driveways are on easements across that common space, but anything with development, utilities near it, the access roadway, that is on an open space parcel that would be owned by the condominium association. Brent thought it was inappropriate for us to have it. We originally had it as an easement and then giving all that land to the commission. And we decided it was probably inappropriate to do that, so we made it a separate parcel. So the ownership is there. The condominium association has the access through that 25-foot access strip and enough area for the septic system and the reserve area if they had to do it in the future. And then everything outside of that is the Conservation Commission open space. It comes up to about here, as you can see on the bottom. It runs in this area, and then it comes around here, kind of comes down and encompasses those 2 parking spots. So, we do have a trail that coming down here. We're gonna put a privacy fence along this property. We'll bring in the trail here around. You can walk along the berm on the detention pond. And it'll actually, we'll have to give an easement.
Just go back a little bit.
I'm sorry. So, it kinda comes, let me just pull it out so you can see it. So the trail will come around the unit, around the back of the detention pond, and then it will go down the little access easement that we have. There'll have to be an easement for, people who wanna use the hiking trail to cross over that roadway path that'll provide the access for the septic. And then it would continue on down to the back, and it would just then it would follow the existing trail, which is, a pretty nice walk.
Trail will be marked from the parking lot?
We can certainly mark that.
I think you need to, because otherwise.
Right.
Yeah, it's Woods Rose, we'd incorporate the same strategy we do
Right.
for marking any trails on conservation
Right.
land, so.
Yeah, there'll have to be some sort of a signage there at the parking spaces, stating that they are available and what it's access to, and then a little trailhead with some markers getting out there.
Yeah, we got conditions for that.
Right.
And a sign with their restrictions,
I'm sorry?
and a sign with our restrictions.
Well, usage guidelines, yes.
Yes, good point. Does anybody here have any questions on it?
I have some questions about the gravel road. I noticed your details pretty much covered everything to the west for the typical bituminous access way. I just didn't see any details on the where the force main is going to be buried. I was just curious, maybe you could describe the depth and what kind of construction the gravel is.
So we do have a 25-foot area there. We probably only have about a 12 to 14-foot gravel road, and we can put a little detail on there. The intention is that all the tanks and all the maintenance takes place up here, where the tanks are located. There'll have to be, where it's a pump, there's gonna have to be some sort of a, electric service connection location where they can put a meter in the switch gear, and we'll have to have a fence around that. But the intention is for this roadway is gonna have very little use. They'll go out, probably have to inspect it every year. I think on a large system, it has to be inspected every year, kept on file if anybody wants to sell a home for the association. So you go out and do an inspection, go out and mow it a couple of times. There really won't be a lot of usage to that road, so we expect, you gotta build a road to construct a septic system, probably 12 feet wide, and then after that, it kinda gets loamed and seeded and, hopefully becomes a nice kind of gravel path that's partially grass,
Okay.
so.
So it's new gravel,
Right, they would have to put new gravel in there. Right now,
and it would be like a fabric underneath it or anything, or just?
probably not. We'd probably take out the loam and subsoil and then put some gravel in there.
And about how deep is the force main? I'm just curious.
Force maybe 4 feet,
4 feet.
so it won't freeze, right?
Following your grades.
Right,
Okay.
right.
At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Brett. Okay, excuse me.
I have another question. The retention basin up next to Newbury Road, what stormwater capacity is that? What is that sized for?
It's sized for the 100-year storm.
What are the elevations between the edge of that and the road?
Between the high water level and the road,
Yes.
so, let me see here. Oh,
Is that relatively flat?
No,
well, it's good,
There's a little
just the
mountain
grading?
No,
Yeah.
between the Newbury Road.
Oh, between here and here?
No, between Newbury Road and the edge of the retention basin,
Yeah,
up
between,
higher. Would you put your finger or
right there.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that goes up. There's like a little
There's a
peak
little
right there.
hummock.
There's a hummock that goes up 80,
The reason I'm asking the question is because Newbury Road is subject to flooding in heavy storm events, and having a retention basin that close to the road concerns me if you're only going to size it for a 100-foot storm. 100 years.
well, so.
Not you're possibly thinking of the lower portion of Newbury Road that's
Well,
down past Harrison Circle, which has had chronic flooding issues in that spot. This is higher up, because this is up above Tenny Road and Isabel Circle area, so well, at least in the 2006 Mother's Day event, which I measure everything by since I was working here at that point in time, and I saw every place that could possibly flood, that portion of Newbury Road did not have flooding on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Right, so we're at elevation 88 right in here. Our pond is at 80 and 82. This is up at 100. So, I mean, and all of our water will flow this way and be captured in that pond and infiltrated.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, I'll turn it over.
Well, you folks have a 3-page memo in front of you, so which has a fair amount of stuff on it. I guess really my first approach here was to see that the plan sheets properly identified all the jurisdictional wetland resource areas under our bylaw, to clean up some of that and do our usual thing by having the full name of the resource area expressed in the legend and the symbology utilized to have some type of continuity. So if it wasn't properly noted and labeled on the plan, at least there'd be an abbreviation that you could, get from one to the other with a legend. The natural heritage endangered priority habitat presents a little bit of a challenge. They've got a note saying that the entire site is in that area, so that's gonna have to do, but that also needs to be expressed in the legend, because they do show, not on this plan sheet, but on one of the first plan sheets, they show that area projected across onto Mr. Sullivan's property to the north, where symbols used, but that symbol wasn't then identified down in the legend area.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of recommendations for you to change some of the labeling and notations and to get things onto the sheets and have the legend be a unifying mechanism, which it's supposed to be, for figuring out what's displayed and depicted on the different plan sheets. That being said, I did also confirm for the commission that all the proposed construction activity, to the best of my knowledge in reviewing all these plans, is confined to only 2 bylaw resource areas: the DEP approved groundwater protection area, zone 2, and the priority habitat for threatened and endangered species. All the other Wetlands Protection Act, either regulated or resource areas, are not being touched or impacted by the construction activity. That being said, though, I did specifically make the request in there that I believe the vernal pool, in terms of the ponded areas of water, that needs to be identified. We need to have the vernal pool area either flagged or some indication that gives us the approximate location. Because right now, you just intuitively know that it's in the delineated BVW area there in the center of the property, but you don't really know that it's oriented and specifically concentrated more up into this area, where this is sort of where it spreads out but then contracts to here. And this is where we have the amphibian breeding activity, because they need the sustained immersion for their egg masses to mature. So that's kind of a substantive suggestion in regards to the resource areas.
I did neglect to mention that Mary Rimmer has been asked to certify that road pool.
Right, well, and
It's in your memo.
you'll see in here
That's
that
under-
that I also listed a number of relatively what we consider standard conditions for a project occurring in these areas, which which also, I'll touch upon one thing a little later on when we go to the stormwater aspect of this. But it includes our normal things such as a prohibition on the use of rock salt, of sodium chloride. But conversely, also allowing more environmentally sensitive ice or de-icing chemical usage. Also specifically conditions any fertilizer for landscaping or lawn care used within the developed portion of the property shall be slow release organic granular type fertilizers low in nitrogen content, and that's a suggested ongoing condition. Pesticides and herbicides, we also try to touch upon this, and so my suggestion for this is pesticides and herbicides shall not be used within the open space parcels A, B, C, and D, stormwater detention basins, or undeveloped portions of the property unless a public health emergency so orders such application. This condition shall survive the expiration of this order. So that's how we're addressing that. In other words, in the people's maintained lawn area, if they wanna have a tick control application, they can do that in their developed lawn area, but not in the quote-unquote undeveloped, non-lawn areas of the property. We believe that that is reasonable, and in an environmentally sensitive groundwater protection area, that's a prudent course of action. As well as I can't believe one day that I came onto a site and someone was about to utilize Roundup to kill some turf grass in their stormwater basin, which the whole reason for treatment, or one of the whole mechanisms for treatment is to have vegetative cover on your banks of your basin.
Didn't look
So,
right.
yeah. Anyway, some people drink the wrong Kool-Aid before they go to work. Yeah, so and then also, we also prohibit the use of reprocessed asphalt or concrete. Again, because of the sensitive drinking water area. And other than that, a whole bunch of lists about different things on the, so I've got some other comments I'd like to segue into when we open the stormwater management hearing,
Okay.
because they're more focused on stormwater. Not that that isn't a concern for both applications.
Go ahead, Kurt.
Brent, I see you've got in here a snow storage, matters, and you say, should the amount of snow on the site exceed the designated snow storage area's capacity and be proposed for removal from the site, then it shall be disposed of in accordance with the DEP, Bureau of Resource Protection Snow Disposal Guidelines. Basically, what does that mean?
They can't go dump it in a river or a wetlands down the street.
That they have to dump it where?
We have several approved sites in
We
town.
have approved sites that are outside the 100-foot buffer zone and not near any flowing water.
Okay, I think there should be more guidance since the homeowners group is going to be responsible for taking care of all this on
Well,
an
it's-
ongoing basis, and that needs to be.
It's a rather succinct DEP's.
Well, they should be
Snow-
we should incorporate a copy as an attachment or something to this.
Well, by all means,
That's all.
yes. I'm gonna say, it's not
That's all.
a, it's not a huge document that proves
Oh, I know.
insurmountable for the man in the street to read.
I've read it in the past, right?
So, you know what, on snow storage though, this is a residential,
You guys are getting into the stormwater thing.
I know,
Well,
that makes my presentation hearing real quick.
these homeowners committees are amateurs in most cases, and if they're lucky enough to have an attorney or an accountant on there as one of their homeowners, then they are fortunate indeed, they can read this fine print and know what to do. But these kinds of conditions and nitty-gritty details are extreme irritants and are apt to be overlooked, so I just think it's useful to have
Right.
additional guidance for them available. My only other question is, I think I remember you said that these are gonna be craftsman type homes? What is,
Yeah, Craftsman style.
Yeah,
does that mean Sears Roebuck? What is, I don't understand, I don't understand what that word
it's an architectural style, let me see if I have a copy of,
Reed's Ferry Sheds.
there you go.
I mean, just orally, I don't need to see any details.
Yeah,
I'm
here's
curious
a-
as to what the term is.
Here's a picture of, they're gonna be kind of, and this was an early, I know there's been a rendition since then, but they're just, they,
Post-World War II.
yeah, they're not gonna be two-story colonials, they're gonna be more single-story looking, they'll have areas upstairs that can be finished.
Kinda looks like a modified cape, actually, what it
Yeah.
does, except it's got a
It
little
looked like
front
my
porch,
house.
little farmer's porch.
Right, right, so they won't be single-story ranches, but they'll have, you know, some large ceilings, maybe some, you know, windows in the front looking out, and columns on the porch, that type of thing.
Thank you.
All right, before we go into the next, what can we do at this point on this? Meaning, the first.
Well, we
one?
should continue this because both of these applications are contingent on Mr. Graham, as well as I'd like to.
You want some more stuff?
I'd like
on
to
the-
spend a little more time, although I've given, I directed my attention to the plan set, and we'll also talk about some other plan things in the stormwater
And
management.
I know you're gonna wanna see some
plan.
color on that map. You know, vegetated wetlands and stuff like that, you're gonna want.
Well, again, I'm really asking just for a little bit more specificity in the labeling of the resource areas, because that's why they're here, because we have jurisdictional areas here,
All
so.
right. So I believe that this point I would ask for a motion to continue the first part of this, which is, so we can go on to the next.
Well, we need to check and make sure we have their permission for a continuance,
Yeah,
because we need more.
the 19th,
For-
I think, is your next meeting,
June 19th, yeah,
I think that's the next meeting.
okay. Do I hear such a
I'll
motion?
make that motion.
Seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, this is a legal notice, Raleigh Conservation Commission. Excuse me. In accordance with the Town of Raleigh Stormwater Management Erosion Control Bylaw, as amended, a public hearing will be held on May 29, 2018 at 8:30 PM in the Town Hall Annex located at 39 Central Street. A stormwater management permit application filed by ONG Design Development LLC for the proposed construction of a roadway, 9 single-family residence driveways, stormwater facilities, utilities, associated grading. The total site disturbance is approximately 246,302 square feet at 50 Newbury Road, map 5, parcel lot 41. Again, you have the floor.
Again, Ben Osgood, Ranger Engineering here representing the opponents, ONG. I think we did touch upon the stormwater design aspects. So I don't know if I need to rehash that, I mean, it's the
Which
detention
sheet is
ponds.
the erosion control sheet?
So the erosion control is gonna be one of the last, second to last sheet will be the plan view. There you go, right
Is that
there.
it?
Yep.
I can probably save us a little bit of time and just have Brent take it over right here,
That's
because
fine.
he's the one that's gonna be doing the critiquing on this.
Right. Well, so, couple of things I wanted to touch on. The first thing, and I tried to capture, the construction sequence. So, we're gonna request that the construction sequence be revised. It appears in a couple of locations on your plan set, probably maybe 2 different sheets or whatever. And the reason for that revision is that we've developed a 2-step process. The first step is we found that limit of work is critical. Limit of work touches upon all the stormwater drainage calculations, because your terra firma that's undisturbed has totally different infiltration capabilities than your maintained lawn, your roadway. I mean, intuitively, we all know that. So we've decided that it's very important. We've had some examples of over-enthusiastic tree clearing. And so therefore, we've developed a 2-step process where we request that the limit of work, which needs to be called out, more than likely specifically on this plan sheet, maybe some others too, that, we want that marked out in our first inspection of the site, is to look and make sure that the limit of work is clearly delineated before any tree clearing commences. We've also taken the strategy that the tree clearing can occur prior to the installation of the erosion control. Because tree clearing lots of times results in trees or the crowns or whatever falling on top of installed erosion controls, and when they get dragged out, they just rip out the erosion controls, or they render it so it's no longer tightly staked in and not functional. It doesn't make any sense to do redos just because of falling trees. So when you start doing the stumping and the earth disturbance, that you need the erosion control in place. So we've developed a two-step process with that, with our stormwater permits, and we also, where appropriate, we roll it into our orders of conditions also. The third thing is that straw wattles are proposed, and we're, on this type of project with this type of activity, we're not going to allow straw wattles to be used. We're going to specifically specify compost or bark mulch sock, 8 or 9 inch minimum diameter. We're also going to request that on the detail sheet, that not only do we need a detail of the sock and specifically addressing where their ends are aligned together and how they're fastened, and also how you pay attention to direction of flow, so you have the overlapping ends not having the flow come down and go right between the two socks put together, because that doesn't do any good. And we're also going to request a detail of the silt fence in combination with the sock, for in situations where there's stockpiled earth where we need that height. I also noticed your detail of the silt fence had the flap being folded under the hay bales, and we found that that installation is
No, that's,
totally non-functional,
I will
and
take
you might as well not
responsibility
even
for
do
that
it.
error, that's,
Yeah,
and I told my guys, throw that detail away, and somehow
Yeah.
it keeps getting on the plan, and
Yeah.
I missed it.
yeah, no, it needs, the skirt, the skirt needs to
It's gotta
be
be buried.
embedded 6
Right.
inches, like the
Right.
manufacturer actually specifies, and then the sock is installed over that disturbed trenching,
Right.
to hold it down, facing towards the work and disturbance. The other thing is, again, notice specification for the construction stabilized entrance pad, only called for 2-inch material. We've been successfully working with a 2 to 3 inch minus specification. The rest of that was fine. Hay bales, no. Get rid of all the references to hay bales. The silt sack, we want to see at least the minimum medium mesh specified. In this situation, you don't have any clay, so we don't believe we need the fine, but medium should be fine. It doesn't say anything at all, so lots of times the guys will buy the cheapest one, which is a coarse, and that's not going to help us in this situation, because there are silts and sands here. Let's see. I think that's kind of it on the top of my head. You folks are going to need to do a SWEP plan, correct? The amount of disturbance triggers the
Yep.
need for
Absolutely.
an NOI with the
Right.
EPA and,
We did a
Okay.
SWIP,
yeah.
we submitted a SWIP,
Well, I haven't quite,
right, it's an
I haven't quite gotten there, but,
The EPA standard is very lengthy, and I don't blame you.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
okay. I just, wanted to initially, the implements of erosion control and its depiction on this plan were my focus, and,
Yep.
because that's what goes into the field, that's what then starts
Right.
people doing stuff, and we want them to do it right the first time so that there aren't any problems. And we've also found that I found that the compost bark mulch socks, much more durable, last longer. They sit down on the ground right to start off with when you're doing that stumping and you're disturbing stuff, and so they perform better than the straw wattle. Now, straw wattles, we still we'll have those in smaller projects, garage additions, stuff like that, that are short-term duration. But I think in this particular situation, we'll all be better served by having the compost park mulch stock.
Now, you've got a list of the conditions that Brent has proposed.
Right, I just, like I said, I scrolled through it on my phone, on the way here, but I didn't see anything.
No.
And we'll just.
No, it's
It's
all
got-
common, it's all common sense,
Right.
practical
Right.
stuff.
And again, I mean, I think we can work.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is, make revisions to the plan and just bring them to you as kind of
Yeah.
a draft and go through things, and if we can all work towards maybe having something by the 19th, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I copied that memo to Mr. Graham too,
Right.
because there's stuff in there that I
Yeah.
believe was going to be
Hopefully he'll have his
germane to
review
him too.
sooner than the 18th.
Right.
No,
That
now,
would
we
be
did
it.
have the discussion about the roof runoff infiltration. Is there any possibility of a meeting, a middle ground here with possibly stone infiltration trenches or something incorporated? That is less, that's less costly site work than actually
Right.
putting in the subsurface dry wells or whatever.
Right,
But it also especially in those soils, it seems to be, again, it would effectively drop down some of the cumulative runoff that goes off and gets into the roadway. Again, I'm just trying to get it into the ground at its
Right.
point of origin instead of letting it run across the street
Right.
and pick up stuff.
yeah, I mean, I'll look at that and see, we could use maybe some trenches along.
Yeah, we'll have to
Property
look
line.
and see how your buildings are with
Right.
where their roof edges are
Right.
and stuff. But, okay,
It gets tough on these with all the different roofs and.
yes, understood. But
It-
anyway, there still might be an opportunity for us to do something.
Right, we can work on that.
Without boosting your site development costs up too much.
So at this time, I can ask for, you can
Continue.
ask us for a
Right,
continuance.
continue to the 19th.
19th. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, who seconded that?
Howard?
They were rushing for it.
Brett, do you need these for your file?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Swanowski was here for
Yes.
the water department for the 401.
You want me to just read this here?
Um,
What do you?
Yes, if you could just please read that, thank you.
Okay, we're now down to certificate of compliance requests, and we have a new request for a certificate of compliance to DEP number 63-0653 at 401 Central Street, map 21, parcel lot 33, lot 2, town of Rowley, water department.
So this is the project for paving at 401 Central Street, which tied in and also incorporated stormwater infiltration trench to the north that follows the fence line and takes runoff to a stilling basin at the back of the gravel storage supply area at the rear of the property. On the front office side to the right, which is to the east, is a combination grass swale, basically, which then leads off into a large crushed stone bed of stone to take all the runoff coming from the front parking area, as much as possible. The grading of the site still sheds some water at the two entrances out onto the street, but most of the rest of it, once you get back in off the right of way, most everything else is now intercepted and subject to treatment. This was one of the things we did to incorporate our need for compliance under the MS4 general permit and my desire to take advantage of different departments doing smaller projects and incorporating stormwater in them. So if it ever comes push to shove and the EPA wants us to prove that we did something, we'll have projects already on the books that we implemented it and did. So the one thing we were going back and forth on today is the grass swale to the right of the parking area in the building was supposed to have a gauge in it. It's only 5 inches deep, and the idea was to put some kind of gauge that would allow one to see when the sanding and stuff started accumulating so much that it filled up that depression, and the depression didn't work to actually retain any water before it went down the slope. And also stop that stuff from going into the crushed stone infiltration bed where it would clog up all the pores and therefore render the crushed stone bed not capable of holding the capacity it was designed to hold. The pavers did a funny implementation of that with a yard long.
Yeah.
And I emailed, so Bob Gray sent me a picture today where they took a metal fence post and they cut off the bottom 5 inches and they mounted that. The only thing I was asking was I wasn't sure how deep that thing got installed because metal fence posts have these stabilizer fins on them that are supposed to be down in the ground.
Yep.
And it looked to me like I was looking at the stabilizer fin right behind the scale.
Yep.
Did,
We didn't dig down to figure out how far it did go down.
is it,
It didn't seem loose, no.
okay, but is it going to withstand
It seems like they would.
someone leaning on it?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I didn't know.
We
how-
could also move the post further down into the ground and bring the level.
Unbolt it and move it up?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it didn't fall over.
Right. It's pretty sturdy right now, but it's very easy to just unbolt the measuring stick and just push the sign down even further.
Okay, all right.
Push the post down even
All right,
further.
well, maybe we should go check
With
it
the
out.
addition of maybe a reflective light on it too, so people can see it.
Well, I was suggesting that because lots of times your snow plowing occurs in evenings or under
Right.
less than clear conditions.
That's pretty easy to do. We have reflective tape
Oh,
in
yeah.
the shop, so.
Yeah. So basically, for all intents and purposes, their project is complete as specified. There are gonna be some ongoing conditions, but I am afraid I haven't had the opportunity to actually look those up, so if you could just accept that there's some ongoing conditions, I would recommend consideration of a complete certificate of compliance with
Any
those
questions?
conditions.
Okay. Do I hear such a motion? Seconds? Okay. All in favor? You sat here all that time.
Yeah, it's all right. I enjoyed
I'm
it.
sorry, who seconded that?
Thank you,
Drew
guys.
second? Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
See ya.
Long meeting.
Stewie's had plenty of. You miss it? You miss it, Stewie? The meetings, long meetings? Don't blame me. Let me just read from,
Yes. There's two
Two.
agenda items. Would you read the two
Oh.
agenda items?
together.
And I'll make an attempt to stitch them together as well as also segue into another
All
aspect.
right, we have, as you've heard, two agenda items. One is a new request for a certificate of compliance for DEP number 63-0088 at 100 Havel Street, map 15, parcel lot 92, Bradley Jamison. And also, along with this, as a result of this, we have an enforcement order and a directive at 100 Havel Street, map 15, parcel lot 92, Bradley Jamison, on an old 1988 enforcement order, and I think at this point, it's probably best to turn it over to Brett.
Okay. So, had a request to look at a perk test evaluation, a request to do perk testing from the Board of Health. Our department receives these on a regular basis because the Board of Health relies upon us to help them implement one of their local regulations, which is to, as much as possible on new construction, prohibit the siting of a subsurface septic system within the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. And on a replacement septic system situation, to try and see that the soil evaluations or whatever are done as far away as possible from bordering vegetated wetlands or streams or whatever. If they can get the 100-foot distance away, fine. Well, so when I went to standard procedure for looking at any of these requests is to see if there is a file in the commission's file cabinets. There was a file for this property. The file contains, it contains an order of conditions for construction of a farm pond in 1988, but it also contained an issued enforcement order from November 24th, 1987, with the following description: extensive filling of wetlands. End of sentence. With no accompanying sketch or any diagram of the property. So I went back into the minutes and started looking at minutes to see if I could find a progression of what occurred in November 1987 and where it led to. The minutes from 1987 did not provide any more specificity except for apparently unauthorized, unpermitted work in wetlands. And it led to discussions and the eventual filing of a notice of intent application for construction of a farm pond. I'm gonna call it a farm pond. You could just say a pond.
I don't have
USD.
much of a voice, I'm sorry.
Yeah, USDA pond.
Brent's
Well,
losing his.
If I say anything incorrectly,
No, it's-
you don't have to say anything, you can just come up and kick me in the shins or whatever, and we'll do a fact check here, whatever. So the reason I passed around in aerial photos, because the next thing I then do is I go and look at aerial photos of the property. So the plan, there's a plan for the pond. The plan for the pond shows an existing house, Haverhill Street, nothing, an intermittent stream corridor flanked by some wetlands, and shows some woods. And then the diagram, which is kind of faded out here, it shows the proposed pond. Now, so the minutes show a progression from a discussion with the commission about altering wetlands to segueing into a notice of intent application to construct a pond. In talking to Mr. Jameson, he tells me that when he first purchased the property, which I think was back around this time period,
85.
85, yeah, so that's close to 87, that there was a lot of debris and apparently improper disposal by possibly abutters or former property owners or whatever, but there was a lot of junk down in the intermittent stream corridor, so much so that it was actually diverting flow in the little bit of a stream channel that was there. And he had apparently started cleaning that up, removing it. The record isn't clear, but it may be that cleaning activity that the early ConCom was trying to figure out what was going on here and why it didn't have a permit. So his response was to file an application and come upon the idea of constructing a pond that would be aesthetically pleasing at the rear of his property. So that's the order of conditions from 1988. The aerial photogrammetry, though, shows a lot of structures, and the assessor's map recognizes a lot of structures in close proximity to that pond, and there's no record of any permitting for that. So coming here now to 2018 with a lot of past activity having taken place in areas subject to regulation but no permitting from the commission, I thought Mr. Dalzell and Mr. Jameson came into the office. I sent out 2 notices of violation. One notice of violation was for not closing the order of conditions. And I'll have to refresh my memory on the other one.
Bridge.
And the other one was for request proof of permit issuance for structures within jurisdictional areas associated with the pond. So, I'm going to drop back and then concentrate on the order of conditions for construction of the pond. So it was clearly evident once I was invited to the property, plus from the pictometry, that I could see the pond. The pond had definitely been constructed. And now, actually, maybe I should go through some of the photos from the site visit. So this photo, you actually can't see it, but on the plan, there's a weir, a concrete weir, to control, keep the level of the pond at a stable height, and then allow, it's got a notch in it, to allow water when it gets up to a certain level then to go down, continue down the stream channel. What's been added is a concrete bridge. The plans are silent on that, but it's obvious that apparently that was a detail left out, because how else could he construct a pond if there wasn't some type of drive or woods road or something to go down there? It's just that a concrete bridge got added, which actually is a nicer feature in terms of going across the pond. There is also a second weir in the stream. So the pond here, his side property boundary, there's the weir that was proposed for the outlet of the pond. Next to that, all you don't see it, that's where the bridge is, because they're right side by side. And then on the property boundary, which is marked by a historic stone wall, there's another concrete weir that had been put in to try to control the flow of the stream. This one's been undermined. I apologize, the pictures do not show it very clearly, but you can actually ascertain it here by this is the spot where the water should be going through. Instead, the water is going underneath and has eroded the bank of the stream on this side.
So how far off the bridge is that?
How far off the bridge?
Give me an approximate,
Oh, 20
yards?
20 feet maybe?
20 feet? Yeah.
5, 30.
25, 30, yeah, not very far. But the point is that it's fractured, it's collapsing, it's broken, it's being undermined by the stream, and the stream channel getting around it is eroding some of the bank. So one of the things I talked about with Mr. Dalzell and Mr. Jameson was, since that was non-functioning, And in a sense, it was causing environmental damage because it's diverting and actually blocking the flow of the stream and causing it to erode its bank. I asked if that could be removed, because it seemed to be a simple case of being able to reach in with an excavator with a thumb and pluck the pieces out of there, and then take the natural stones and reconfigure them so there's an unobstructed intermittent stream channel back in that place, which will prevent eroding the bank and sediment going down the stream onto the next downstream property. So that's one of the tasks on quote-unquote a to-do list here. And there's just another picture showing that some concrete had been put down there to sort of be like a flume or to let it overflow and keep it from eroding the bed, but again, the water was undermining it and it was all broken, so that's a candidate for removal. Here's the banks of the pond towards the residence, towards Haverhill Street. Here's the other side of the pond where there's a wooden small camp structure or house up on blocks with a little porch that basically is right on the shore of the pond. No permitting for that structure. Upstream, going in the direction towards Prospect Hill, it's hard to see here, but take my word for it, that's a wooden bridge that used to be able to drive like tractors or ATVs across. I'm not sure that it's in structurally sound condition. That was identified as another task that could be removed that would lessen the impact. It should have had some kind of permitting because it's going across the intermittent stream and resting on something, but that's a potential task for removal and cleanup. Not sure if it's negatively affecting things, but if it collapses and gets in the flow and obstructs the flow of the channel, it would be detrimental to that stream. Behind the camp building, looking into the woods, which this backs up, I believe, on the Prospect Hill DCR property, these are skunk cabbage coming up. This is forested BVW, which doesn't appear on any overlay or plan. And there's a lot of landscaping debris. You're looking at a lot of accumulated leaves, trimmings, as well as a substantial pile of branches, tree limbs, etc. back there. And this is skunk cabbage forcing its way up through the fill. So this is an indicator that there's been some filling by depositing landscaping debris in bordering vegetated wetlands. This is another task that was identified as being capable of being removed and that material brought out. I encouraged Mr. Jameson to remove the superficial stuff and to wait until after tonight's meeting to see if the commission would allow authorization for reestablishment of trying to get it down to original grade, which is probably only 6 to 8 or maybe even 12 inches. But again, you can see the skunk cabbage is forcing its way up through that deposited landscaping debris, and this is another view of that same large pile of brush and branches that's anywhere from 6 to 7 feet in height.
Where did you say that was on the property?
It's right in here.
Okay.
So here's the camp building on the shore of the pond, and in between there, these are some shadows of like some oaks. It's right in back here. This shed and canopy pole area, whatever, is 20 feet off of forested wetlands.
So where's that pond being fed from?
Pardon me?
Where's it being fed?
Stream coming down by the.
It actually comes off the other side of Haverhill Street, Whitney Farm, Whitmore Farm, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Comes down in between Carol Powers, I think that's her name, Carol
Yes.
Powers' place, and a little further up, there's that area that's just kind of wooded before the guy with the metal sculptor that has the big insect. Anyway.
Okay, thanks.
NATO stuff.
So this is just showing the crushed stone turnaround area in front of the metal storage building that has an overhead door in it. Again, the commission's files have no permitting, that's on a concrete slab. Then we have the wooden pole roof canopy area, and here's the pile of debris. And this is an aluminum canvas awning canopy that got blown over by the wind. So it's a small truncated area that's had that landscaping debris and a little bit of filling involved in it. So the proposed strategy for a solution of these things. If the commission agrees, I believe the enforcement order in 1987 was resolved by Mr. Jameson filing the notice of intent and getting an order of conditions in 1988. At my urging, he has recorded that order of conditions. We could find no proof that it had been recorded. I think, let's see, let me just look at this. Because this was very early on with DEQE being the issuing authority for this. Not really sure, and I also don't believe, I think other than having administrative help, I think Donna Titus, I think? Diane, thank you. Being the minute taker, I don't believe they had an actual agent or anything.
She was the secretary.
Because they would put notes on the interior sleeve, and usually all the notes end at the issuance of the order. No further follow-up or anything. So since Mr. Jameson intends to sell his property, I thought the best strategy would be to give him a true and attested copy, get this recorded, and I'd like to request from the commission tonight that it seems very evident that that pond was constructed, the pond is there, the weir that's supposed to go with the pond is there. There's some additional stuff, but if we just focus on the pond and its weir, that's there in place and functioning. And I'd like the commission to consider the issuance of a certificate of compliance to close out that old order that he's now recorded, because I believe it's clearly documented that he did the work as the plan. Now that's not since it's not an engineered plan, the commission may accept that that is valid for covering the as-built condition as well as being the proposed condition.
The property is in a lot better condition now than it was in the 1980s.
Right, well, we're gonna talk about some other stuff, but this is the first step on the
Do I hear
progression.
such a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Seconds?
No, you gotta lift up the sash
Always get the finger.
and move the big stick out of the way. And be careful not to drop it.
On your finger.
Yeah.
Thank you. Fighting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. DEQE number 63-0088.
Who was governor?
Beginning in time.
Who was governor?
I don't know, but things were done a lot different back then, weren't they?
Now, I'd also like to see direction from the commission. Now, our current policy, it wasn't done then, but our current policy is to issue a return to compliance letter. I would like to be authorized to issue a return to compliance letter to close out that early enforcement order and provide him with documentation, so if anybody coming in researching our files, they will see that in our files as well as he'll have a copy, because even though the minutes are not
Right.
real clear on those things being connected, I believe they are, just from the progression on how they were
Do I
talking.
hear such a motion?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Judy.
Judy,
I'll let you-
okay, that takes care of that. Okay. Now, I believe I've distributed to everyone, so, I'm gonna make a recommendation that the way to address some of the current issues on the property are by consideration of issuing an enforcement order. The enforcement order would be issued for cutting, clearing, grading, altering, and placement of filling in the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands, BVW, which is cited in 310 CMR 10.02, and in bordering vegetated wetlands, which is cited in the regulations 310 CMR 10.55, of approximately 500 square feet. This is state and local jurisdictional, and placing a concrete weir in an intermittent stream without application or an issued permit. Issuance of the enforcement order and with the commission directing me to issue a directive which would instruct Mr. Jameson, with the help of Mr. Stuart Dalzell, to engage in activities, subject to my review, of removing the collapsing weir, the collapsing wooden bridge, and also the landscaping and yard debris that's in forested wetlands. And if the commission would further direct me, I would like the ability to consider a couple of placement of posts, no cut, no disturbance posts.
Those would be good for the next property owner.
Well, exactly, because he's about to sell the property, as well as the directive. I also, I sought some advice from town council, because this was a unique situation. And town council suggested the requirement, we have a requirement in our orders that when property is sold, that an affidavit is prepared, and the new property owner acknowledges the existence of wetland resource areas, et cetera, and makes out an affidavit and signs it and attests it. And town council thought this would be a good idea, as well as including the statement that structures located within these areas were erected or constructed without review and approval by the Conservation Commission, and therefore shall not be altered and expanded, or expanded, unless reviewed and approved by the Raleigh Conservation Commission. And that way, Mr. Jameson would be able to sell his property. The commission would know that the buyer of his property has been informed and is attesting to the fact that they know there's regulated resource areas all around in that area, as well as those structures which didn't get a permit. If they wish to modify, change them, or whatever, they'll know that they have to come before the Raleigh Conservation Commission.
Does that include potentially removal?
No.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Any activity that would alter, dredge, fill, or remove,
Okay. I'm just
as long as it's in a regulated area. That whole area, because the pond and the edge of the pond is a resource area,
Yeah,
and then the forested wetlands, just 20 feet, 100-foot buffer zones come from both directions there and overlap. That whole area is really within the commission's jurisdiction. But, there probably isn't anything there that the commission wouldn't have permitted based on the time period that those things were put in place. I don't see anything there, except for that collapsing weir. that's really the only thing that's been causing any harm. The rest of it, the landscaping debris, I mean, that happens a lot. That's not. that's
Especially
not
since
the-
Raleigh doesn't have a tree dump.
But anyway, I'm proposing this as a pathway to assist Mr. Jameson so that we can get all these loose ends all taken care of. He can clean up the fill and debris that's in the wetland, the weir that's causing a problem and destabilizing the bank, that can come out, and the collapsed wooden bridge, that can come out, and then we can all start afresh, so to speak.
Can you read the last thing that you read again, please?
Sure. Structures located within these areas were erected or constructed without review or approval by the Raleigh Conservation Commission and therefore shall not be altered or expanded unless reviewed and approved by the commission.
I'd like to see a clause added to that indicating that there's a perpetual approval for access by the Conservation Commission and or its agent. So we don't need to get homeowner permission for you to go on the property in the future. I'd like that notice incorporated, in this. Because this is way out of sight, it's off the road, it's hard to see what's going on back there. And I think we should have continuing permission to access the property without having to approach the way, other than as a courtesy.
Okay, well,
Some wording.
may I consult with town council and accomplish that with whatever is legally appropriate wording?
You still have satellites.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
They didn't have satellites in 1980, but, well, they could see Cuban missiles, but they were.
Does this all sound,
It does.
so, I mean, I don't wanna be
I have
committing you
more
to any.
commentary, I just don't have any
Nope, I think it's a good
ability
thing,
to
but
talk too much.
it's a good thing. We
Well,
just-
again, as Stewie knows, I, was hoping you'd be able to attend tonight so that we could hash out these details.
When I first arrived in Raleigh in '85, the property was a one-room shack with a hillbilly trash dump, for the lack of a better, bicycles and washing machines and.
Well, that's one thing that, like, I ran into down at the VFW,
Yeah.
cleaning out back. And I ran into it at the cemetery dump we had out there.
Yeah.
You start cleaning things up, when you get to the washing machine or the old Chevy, Stewie, don't keep digging, cause you'll just open a can of worms, just,
Well, this
just
stuff,
say that,
but this was
No,
all
seriously.
this was a bottle and can dump.
yeah, we all had
Metal
those.
dump that was, what happened was vegetation dropped into that stream bed, caused the flow of stormwater to go around the trash, so it caused it to erode itself around it, and then you had this island of, so I'd
Yeah,
spend
debris.
weekends and go to the Raleigh dump.
Yeah.
When old Jelly used to work there,
Yep,
back in the day, and he used to say, where are you getting all this stuff? Trailer after trailer after trailer, so my thought was, it all got taken out, it was just dried right up, and there's the new stream bed, once you took everything out of its way, and trees and all that stuff, and we graded going into it, and someone said, you can't do that, that's filling wetlands, and that's when the whole thing started, and the town decided, we want that to be wet. I said, well, I'd like to finish the yard. They said, well, you can't, because we want it to be wet. And that's when I said, well, if you want wet, we can make it a pond.
Make it real wet.
And then Bill Hilton was the city engineer for the city of Lynn, and he mapped out all Lynn Woods on foot. He was 93 years old, he did that drawing. Guy's a
oh,
legend.
yeah,
He mapped out the Lynn Woods himself on foot.
They'll lean to take good care of that 1941 Chevy pickup.
Oh, I did
But
happen to
anyways,
notice that too,
He's
Stewie.
next door neighbor to my Uncle Dan and
Split
Lynn.
windshield.
And I
Looks
got
like-
old Bill Hilton to come up in his old,
Yeah.
his son drove him, he was too old. And he designed and drew that plan.
Yep, so, when you moving into your new place?
It's going slow.
I went down, Craig, you haven't even touched your boat yet?
No, it's a lot to do and there's a lot to get ready, just,
But anyways, I think that this was a very good offer that Brent has suggested. It's better for everybody. The
I
place
agree.
is obviously a lot better off than it was. back then.
I've had 34 years in town, enjoyed every one of them, and
Yeah.
still gonna just move down a Warehouse Lane,
Oh, I know,
just to get off the busy road.
Hopefully this cleanup will make everyone happy. And
Yeah,
septic's
it's just
way
so
away.
that, yeah,
The septic is going up by the street.
best place for it, you know.
So what do we need? So,
So I need a motion to confirm and ratify the new enforcement order and instruct me to prepare a directive to address the tasks that I've covered in the presentation, as well as to require some no cut, no disturbance posts and the requirement of an affidavit from the new.
so moved.
As discussed here.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much, folks. Good night.
Stewie, I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Yes.
Feel better.
So is the
Good night,
truck,
folks.
is the truck
Yep,
part of
they
the
get-
deal?
You want the 41 Chevy?
Yeah, is that going with it? Is that already gone?
No, that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah, you've done a lot with the place. It's-
well, the place is really, it's unique and it's been fun to care for it all the time. It's beautiful down there, it's just
Oh, yeah.
beautiful.
All right,
All right.
Thanks,
Good night,
Brad.
everybody.
Yep.
It'll
Thank you.
take me a little bit to write up those instructions, but I'll be working on it.
and he'll have the signs for you here. to-
All right.
For the no cut, no disturb after
Yeah.
you're done.
Sounds good, thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Where's he moving to?
Right down by Stewie,
Oh, okay.
you know, you're right across the, from welding shop
Forget what's your name.
there. All right, is there anything else we have tonight?
Yes, I have.
Oh, yes, we have,
And I think it was last night or the night before, I was trying to check the videotape of the last planning board meeting, and in doing so, I looked at the agenda, and the very last item on the agenda for their May 16th meeting indicated, and I didn't watch this that far, but that the cell tower behind the police station, the people who own that want to put in a propane facility and a pad of some kind. I didn't know that that was something that you were aware of, and I think we conditioned all of that at some
Yeah,
point.
no, I wasn't.
So,
that would probably be for a generator.
yes, so I'd recommend that, you know, appropriate to look into that. Seems to me
No, I
that-
think it's probably all jurisdictional, because I think that's all within the 100-foot buffer zone coming from somewhere.
So it shouldn't come before us, but
Oh, okay.
anyway, so I just wanted to.
They must have got tired of the two large oak trees that took out the power line there. They must have figured two times, we better put something in place before the third time.
You don't wanna work on that hill again, I'll tell you that much. All right, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right.